All right. Good day, everyone. Welcome to this PIMvendors.com webinar together with Priint and Digital Squid. We'll go into introductions in a bit. Before, I just want to quickly start with some housekeeping. We're going to talk about Priint and product data, but we also would like to hear your perspective, and that's something you can do and comment live during the webinar in the comment section on your right-hand side. We'll try to weave in those comments during the conversation. So if you have anything to share, any practical information or questions you have for our speakers, for me, Peter, or Jan, just drop them right in the comment section and we'll weave those questions or comments into the conversation or pick them up afterwards. Second, housekeeping, we're making a recording here. That means if you have to leave early, you can. We'll be sharing a recording with everyone that is attending right now. So if you have to jump off to another call, well, don't worry, you'll still be able to review everything later. With that out of the way, let's first do a quick round of introductions. And before I continue introducing myself, let's just quickly go and give the opportunity to Peter and Eric Jan first. Peter, would you like to start me?
Hi, everybody. I'm really looking forward to the hour now with you, everybody. My name is Peter Flory. I've been with Priint since last October, but I've been in the market, PIM, DAM, and specifically Priint for well over 10 years. Yes, and I would like to share a little bit about the current situation around Priint. Eric, you're next.
Thank you. So I'm Eric. I've been in the whole B2B technology arena for a bit over 15 years, mostly working with CMS, commerce, and PIM vendors, but also agency side. And what I usually do is I help B2B tech companies with driving pipe through marketing, content, automation, LinkedIn. And I've been working with both Priint and PIM vendor, Stephan, Peter, for a good couple of years.
All right. Then, PIM vendors, we help customers with their product data challenges. That sometimes concerns PIM, product information management, but basically we cover the whole product data pipeline. So from onboarding all the way to publication and all the systems you meet in between. That could be, of course, AI in 2026, but also Priint. And that's also why we're having this webinar to discuss how all these different product data worlds intersect and how we can take that from where we are now and the channels that you're serving right now to the channels that you want to serve in the future and make sure that you're ready. Usually we help people get their product data ready in the systems and IT architecture landscape, in the process landscape. But what I would like to discuss today with all of you and with our panel is what happens when the data is done in the NDM or in the PIM. I think the best person to open that conversation here is Peter. And maybe Peter, please just take it away.
Yes. Thank you, Stephan. Before we start, I'd just quickly like to introduce Priint Group. What we do, we automate the production of collaterals for any type of industry from any data source at any automation level. So it's a very flexible solution. Here are some of the customers we work with. A lot of manufacturers who produce data sheets and catalogs, distributors and retailers doing flyers, brochures, and so on. And well, many of you might think Priint is an old thing. It's like old school, but in fact, it isn't. Copy and paste is. And we really want to talk about what Priint achieves for you, what value Priint solutions can provide for you. Catalogs, data sheets, labels, price lists, packaging, sales sheets, and so on. Those are all classical use cases. And here are some of the collaterals our customers produce. So they, for instance, produce data sheets. We see examples here from Assa Abloy, from Vago, and from Stiga. And they typically do this fully automated, completely data-driven from PIM data. Customers also produce very large, complex catalogs. In this case, it's around 2,000 pages in up to 30 languages. And this is done in a highly automated fashion, as well as labels and packaging. Retail is a different story, and we get back to that in a later stage today. They typically do not produce completely data-driven, fully automated. They employ a rather more partially automated approach, and the reasons why we're going to talk about later. But there are still a lot of customers who use our solutions very creatively. So they actually sit down and have a think about how to position particular assets, images, and product data on the page. We are very well known for the Comet plugin. That's basically a plugin for Adobe InDesign. We can also provide plugins for Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Express. And Canva is in the making. But that basically means you can work at a very creative level, but still automate as much as you can and still be connected to PIM data and update anytime. Now, the important bit is obviously, in order to do print publishing, in fact, in order to automate any channel, you need a sound source of data provided typically by PIM systems. From our solution through real-time connectivity, we can pull product data, we can read variance categories, practically the full product model taxonomy, inclusive different languages and image assets. And once we got that, we can automate the production for all touch points. So as you can see, print is not really the old world. It's very much at the forefront for a lot of industries out there. And in fact, we do have quite a few online-only companies who are starting to think about producing very individual and personalized brochures and catalogs. But that's something we're going to come back to. So what we can say so far is that print is a digital channel, even if it sometimes leads to an actual printed catalog or something like that. Right. But as we can see, we need good PIM data. So maybe Stephan and Eric, if you say a little bit about the importance of good PIM data, and on the other hand, the fact that good PIM data is a necessary but not necessarily a sufficient factor for good print channel.
No, for sure. I mean, everything starts at that foundation. And I think that more and more companies, boardrooms are waking up to that reality that if you want to participate in the modern world of AI or digital print, or actually want to do anything with your rich product catalog, you need good quality data. It all starts at that foundation. It's the foundation you build your rich omnichannel experience on. I'll stop with the buzzwords, I promise. But it is true. And to get to that good quality data, we see a lot of customers and leads reaching out to us saying, hey, we want to do stuff with our products, but we're limited by bottlenecks. Please help us get to that foundational level, get to that structured product data that we need to do anything with that product data downstream, right? Whether that is AI, whether that is your web shop, whether that is digital print. And I think that with everything you start to neglect, it starts to sort of rot, and you get the garbage in is garbage out situation with all data, including product data. So usually there's a lot of cleaning up to do. But if you get there, then yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful world that is waiting for you on the other side.
Well, I think, Stephan, actually, that's as Peter was also saying, it is, good PIM data does not actually equal good publishing. So I think that you need to figure out how your data is structured with enough flexibility to even be the possibility to add on additional channels in a later phase. So I think that actually plays quite well in what both you are saying.
Yeah. Let's not forget there are a lot of companies out there, and I speak to such companies practically on a daily basis. They actually have a PIM system. They actually have pretty good data, but on the print side, they're still doing copy and paste. So they're still in InDesign, and they copy data from emails, from Excel sheets and whatever. And some companies are only waking up to the fact now, hey, we got the data, let's do something with that. Let's connect the print channel to the data, and let's get started working on those.
Yeah, it's just the foundation, right? The data is the foundation, and there's a lot of work to be done there for sure. But on top of that data, you then start to build the rest of your architecture, and that is both the tooling and the process architecture. So to get to good quality data on the published side, you need the tools and processes to do that and to facilitate that. Maybe Peter, could you share something about doing that in the most efficient way? Like how, if you have that foundation in place, how can you then do the publication as efficiently and effectively as possible?
Of course. Just a quick overview how our solution operates. This looks like too much information in one place, but in fact, it's very simple. We do connect in the center to PIM systems, but to additional data sources. And once we've consolidated all the different data sources, we can then do desktop publishing, which means we work with plugins for InDesign, Adobe Illustrator, and so on, which I've shown before. But we can also do what we call workgroup publishing. This is really a browser-based solution that allows you to do everything from planning, automating, manually populating pages, review and approval. We can do web to publish, which is something we look at later, providing self-service on-demand portals for different groups such as sales, customers, and so on. And we can also do headless publishing. Without diving much deeper into this.
If I may on that
yes,
one, Peter, because
of course.
this is actually, I like this slide. But I think the power of both print, but actually from an architectural point of view is that it becomes almost easy to swap data sources and to swap output sources as well. And that's actually something Scott Brinker said somewhere in the last weeks as well, that that this whole flexibility is becoming key in MarTech. So I really like the flexibility in this.
Yes, and we may come back to that. One point I want to make clear is that it obviously is a huge difference whether we produce fully automated from data straight to output, which is something a lot of customers do with our solutions worldwide, in fact. Data sheets like this one. This is something you can produce from data without too much thinking about it. It's just a straight process. We have a template, and the templates simply run through the data and put them onto the page. It's very simple. So when we talk about fully automated publishing, that's really producing fully automated from data, completely data driven. And that actually is a brilliant thing if we could do it. It's maximal efficient. There's no manual effort during production. It gives you best scalability. So maybe you want to produce for one market, for one language a day, and you want to scale up to 50 markets and 30 different languages. You could do that with this process very simply. And you got instant time to market. So you can produce whenever the data are ready and your data sheets are ready. Now, this is something we want to talk about. With a lot of industries, that's not what you can do. With a lot of industries, you need to do what we call partially automated publishing. That means we still automate from data, but we use different approaches. So we can use a purely online-based solution. We call it the Priint suite to produce your catalog, for instance. This gives everybody transparency of what's in the catalog, what has been produced automatically, what do we need to do manually, what are the current tasks, who does the review, who does the approval. That's all in that package, and we can produce straight to PDF. Eric, did you
Peter,
want to
can
say
I?
something?
Yeah, because I see, of course, team review and team on this, and actually that triggers me to talk a bit about. I'm not sure this was shared earlier already, but as PIM vendors and Priint are going to the Webwinkel Vakdagen, we have multiple audiences there, right? We have the PIM the guys with the product guys, the commerce guys, the creatives. We have them all. So now that you say a little bit about teams, I'm a little bit curious from both of you to hear if you see a certain structure in what kind of teams own these kind of processes from the PIM side, but also very much, Peter, from the publishing side. Shall we stop on the top maybe with the PIM side? And that would actually be for you then.
Yeah, no, well, I think I just wanted to quickly highlight this flow as well, where yes, you need to have a process in place, but it needs to be a smooth process with as little review and approval as you have, or as you can possibly get away with. I just read somewhere that every approval layer is X the throughput time between sort of launching in a day versus launching in 10 days. And adding another layer of approvals is going to make sure you get a go-to-market a throughput of 100 days. So just getting this, I just want to highlight the importance of getting this process in place and making sure that is so as smooth as possible without any bottlenecks. And
Endless
again,
amounts of frustration.
Exactly. And I think for sure, yes, the foundation needs to be in place, and that happens in the PIM or in the MDM. It needs to be published from that system in the right shape. It needs to be correct data, right? But that doesn't solve the whole output part and the publication part. That's not where a PIM is for.
No. And maybe if I might add my marketing experience on top of that, right? Because if you don't have this element automated, what you see is that data sheets, but also catalogs, they are big bunches of data, multiple pages, hundreds of pages, frequently with catalogs. And then, finally the marketing, or if it's the marketing team has finally put everything together. And then they hear back from a respective owner of a certain product category that they just updated the description, a different version, a slight price adjustment. And you have to go back into Adobe kind of solutions to then start correcting on a manual side, which, to what Peter was saying, the whole no more copy paste will be a God bless, right? It will be such a time saver, such a frustration saver. And you can actually reduce review cycles instead of days or weeks or months. Becomes a press of a button almost. Peter, I can imagine, because Stephan just talked a little bit about the PIM side of things, is there something to say maybe by industries, what you often see from who owns what?
Yes, obviously, if we look at the old setup, manually producing a catalog in InDesign without any connection to any data. That's obviously very laborious, takes a lot of time, and I agree with you, Stephan. From that perspective, any review process will slow down everything considerably. Because what happens, as a media designer, I produce a PDF of the current state of a set of pages, and I send it back to product managers, category managers, marketing people. They need to make their corrections and so on and send it back. That is a process that takes a lot of time. Now, in this world, in our world, everything is integrated. So yes, as we can see at the bottom, we can still use InDesign to produce a catalog, but now it's connected to the data. And if we use the team review and approval stage, all the feedbacks are integrated in the system. So it's going to be product managers and category managers part of that platform, and they get feedback from marketing and maybe media design that some data need to be optimized, there are some images missing or whatever. So the whole conversation is in one platform, and even the media designers using InDesign can take part. They can see the messages, they can write messages to whoever is responsible for what part. So now we're talking about an integrated approach, giving full transparency of what's happening to all stakeholders. Now, a lot of industries, they don't need that fully collaborative approach. But when we talk about retail, this is an example, the UK, this is actually the current leaflet, and it's absolutely clear that producing a spread like this is a completely different setup compared to producing a data sheet. So in this example here, I need to have a conversation about what are we going to put as the main product on a particular page, and what other products am I going to add that kind of fit the theme? They're not even the same product category, because obviously we are talking about meat here and red wine plus some condiment. Different product categories. The integrated collaborative approach allows conversation about this for all of the team. And Aldi spends something like 25 weeks producing 1 week of leaflets. So you can imagine they have multiple weeks in parallel. So they need systems where everybody can talk to everybody in the system and have a clear idea of where am I in the process of producing a particular week leaflet, and what needs to be done to be actually ready to go into production.
Interesting how the sort of workflow or needs to adapt, or the process needs to adapt to the goal you're aiming for, right? So in this case, yes, you want to have that human in the loop and that discussion about which condiment to place next to the main product in this spread. On the other hand, in the more automated fashion, you want to have as little human intervention as possible, because the less human intervention you have, the more up to date your data is and the more correct your data is. And just making sure you have the right process in place and the right people in the right process is, I think, sort of the goal. And it depends a bit on the outcome you're trying to achieve, how to set up that process and how to set up those people. So if you look at the automation, so that only goes to a certain point. You take the data in, you publish it on a leaflet like this. What then is still the role of the human in this? Do you have any input on that, Eric?
Because I think, as Peter was already sketching, on one hand, we have this beautiful designed leaflet catalog almost, with basically emotion being sold here. And on the other hand, Peter, if you can show the other one again, like Wago, or I think the other slide with the data sheet. Thank you. It's a total different approach. But if you actually bring it almost back to a data point of view, from a data perspective, not so much changes. Yes, you don't get all the ingredients for a dazzling dessert, which probably is a good thing. But you get a very nice image of, you're going to get this. And, well, I assume you're going to be very happy with it. Where if I'm indeed starting to pull cables, then, yeah, I like this. I like what I can expect. But I want to know the data sheet elements here. So the data point, on one hand, it all lives in the PIM system in a similar way. But based on the templates, based on the audience, it's a completely different ballgame. And in this case, because emotion gets involved to a much higher degree, I can imagine, Peter, there's a little bit more human cycles involved in getting this to the emotional level that you want.
Exactly. What we're talking about here is above the data. The data need to be there. The data need to be correct. The prices need to be correct, and so on. The images need to be there. But here we have additional layers on top of the naked data, as it were, because here we have a conversation about the time of the year. Obviously, this is the Easter leaflet. This is going to be in the stores in a couple of weeks, just before Easter. So somebody has the plan, hey, just before Easter, we're going to run Easter-themed products. And then we have a context layer. I want to bring into context the leg of lamb with the wine and the condiment, right? The mint sauce, plus a few side dishes, plus the pudding, as it were. So there are several layers on that. Hidden behind all of that is an additional layer, because they are actually thinking, where am I going to get a million legs of lambs for the best price? Where am I going to get that Rioja for the best price? Beyond the naked data, there are several contextual or even semantic levels that are being thought about in the team before that is actually being produced. So we're talking about this publication layer, which is between the data and the actual collateral as we see it here. And obviously, this is an extreme example. A lot of the participants today probably won't even think about this, because that's not what they are doing. Most of them will be producing something much more structured, much more open to automation. Basically, what we're saying is, what we do have is a collaborative platform here, which can produce the extreme sample of something that absolutely needs a multi-layered collaborative approach. I mean, they're producing many, many different variants of that leaflet for different regions.
And that makes it so interesting, right? Because
exactly,
you show quite opposites. On one hand, data sheets, and on the other hand, you're showing a food catalog. Again, from emotion to data driven. I'm sorry, I think you want to go into this one, Peter.
No, it's just quickly showing the platform which can be used to produce something like this, but it can also be used to produce standard catalogs, because this is one user interface. I can automate from data. I can put things together manually, and we will see a sample in a minute. So this is a very wide approach.
It's the real blueprint to do this.
Exactly. It's the blueprint, and we can still combine it with some finishing in InDesign, because if we look at this, some media designer may want to go into this and move this image, change a few colors and so on. So there is still the option to use the platform and InDesign subsequently for finishing.
So maybe jumping a little bit from topic here, because I'm in marketing. I love how data can be structured out. I love how technology can make all this possible. But I think also, the moment the foundation is really solid, we can start doing personalization. Localization becomes a lot easier. Local legislation, which can be a real pain for both the PIM world as well as data labels and data sheets become all that. So when we have that in place, publication layer actually can apply rules consistently and make personalization possible. Do you have examples, actually both of you, examples and experience on that? I would say Stephan.
Yeah, no, good question. I was just thinking, I mean, yes, I see the future, right? And I see looking forward, I see that personalization, which has been somewhat of a dream in the past few years, slowly come to reality, maybe with sort of the integration of AI and creating model context protocol service on top of your PIM or product data, so you can grab that data live from the source, basically, and have that in a ChatGPT conversation, or have that personalized in an NLM conversation. I still think that to bring that personalization to an audience at scale using, like, let's say, an e-commerce solution, there's still too many layers in between, too many bottlenecks. But if we're looking at, for example, the print side, we do see customers creating custom brochures for a specific customer, right? And it's not personalized on the fly, so define personalized in this way. But we do see customers taking, like, they have a catalog of, 20,000 spare parts, but they know that at this customer, they use only these products that are relevant for this 5,000 spare parts in the catalog. So they create a custom catalog just for that customer, which is in a way now uniquely possible, because previously you just have to send them the full K product catalog. And K is sort of maybe still manageable, but there's also the businesses with a 500K catalog. You just get lost in those catalogs, right? So in that sense, yes, we do see the person.
It's one of those examples I always like, right? The catalog is such a great example. And on the B2B side, I think you just covered it. But even on the B2C side, honestly, I never do a sun vacation, a beach vacation. I always like to go skiing whenever possible. And those catalogs I get still contained both worlds, right? So actually, based on my browsing history, based on my behavior, based on even my direct shopping behavior, why do I get beach vacations still to these days? We can really keep that to half a catalog, save some costs, save some money. We can throw in an element of sustainability here. And just send me digital or on paper the ski vacation in the B2C world.
Yes, the interesting thing about personalization, obviously, is that there are different types. A lot of companies, they do personalization or the production of individual collaterals or individual websites, whatever, by using information they have regarding particular ideal customer profiles, even with regards to that particular person who's actually interacting at the moment. So there is company-driven personalization, but I think the more interesting type of personalization here is when it's user-driven or customer-driven, right? So we do not prescribe the customer or the end user, hey, this is the product or the number of products you should look at. Give the customer or the user the chance to really select their own stuff. We've done that in the area of datasheet production. So Wago is an interesting case here.
I love that case, by the way.
Yeah, it's highly technical, and everybody can try this out. This is open to everybody. So if you go to Wago, select any of their products, and you want to generate a data sheet, it doesn't simply just download a data sheet. What it actually does, it gives you the chance to select the type of data, to select the language you want to have in your data sheet. Very quickly done. I can select whatever I want to do, and then I can generate the data sheet, and the data sheet is generated on demand from fresh data based on whatever I've given the system to do for me personally, right? So this is obviously highly technical. This is not for consumers, but there are a lot of use cases where workshops need that type of information for particular products they're going to use when building something. So that's a super solution for.
I am a customer of Wago, big fan of them. Actually use some of their data sheets to figure out what I needed. But I think what is also quite interesting, now that when we have the right PIM data, when we have the right foundation in place from a Print's perspective as well, is that there's a role shift going on, right? Because marketing actually shifts from being that production office to an enablement office,
Exactly.
so that sales and local teams can start creating their on-brand output with the guardrails that marketing supplies. So instead of sales going to marketing like, hey, I need this deck for 50K for a specific customer, they actually can start doing that themselves. And I think that that's actually a very nice bridge, because it makes teams more efficient, it makes departments more efficient, and frustration goes lower because no one is waiting on each other for this. And I think who's actually saying yes the loudest? But I think, Peter, actually you have an insight on that as well. Price books and everything.
Exactly. Stephan, did you want to add something?
For sure. I mean, but that's that this personalization only works when you have the data correct, right? So you need to have that foundation.
And the
I
system.
hate to come back to it all the time and keep beating that drum, but we see so many customers making, well, it's easy to make the mistake or to have the ambition to start doing this beautiful personalization or beautiful AI generation or connections, but you have to have the data, the foundation in place. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to add.
Absolutely. The foundation needs to be solid. Whatever happens between the data and the actual publication needs to be solid. So if I want to do company-driven personalizations and mix in data about ideal customer profiles, individual data I might have in my CRM, that all needs to be consolidated before I actually publish something. I've just shown the Wago example, which is really user-driven. As you rightly said, Eric, the possibility of self-service portals opens up a lot of new opportunities to provide different stakeholders and different people in the company with the opportunity to produce highly specialized, highly individual, highly personalized types of collaterals. With Hoffman Group, hang on, internal portal. I can't show this live because it's internal. Basically, what happens here, as a Hoffman Group salesperson, and again, Hoffman Group is highly technical in their type of products. But as a salesperson, I can create a promotion, so I can give some information about what it's all about. I can manipulate the design of everything. I can actually give information about customer. I can add the product range I want to present to a particular customer, and then I can actually preview and download highly individual catalog for a particular customer. And I can provide this as an online catalog, which is clickable, so I can actually click through the pages, or I can provide it as a PDF to be sent by email or anything. So this is another example of how we can do self-service portals. And in fact, I think 50 or 60% of the dialogues I have currently with prospects and customers are dealing with that types of approaches for different industries, for different types of products, and for different users, obviously. Sometimes it's the sales team that needs an approach like that. Sometimes it's partners. Sometimes it's international subsidiaries and so on.
It's something I'm seeing as well, Peter, right? Is that actually if you have the solutions in place, then either teams can start doing this themselves, or it takes almost no effort to have it done for them. Because in this example with Hoffman, a couple of clicks and you have that customer personalized story together without putting pressure on your creative team for a couple of days, if not longer. So it's a huge real world value that you show on something like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually like the sort of flexibility that it gives to the end user, right? So it is basically the world slowly being turned upside down, where instead of just having a single source of data that is basically then just being spread into the world from that single source, and it's a push model, right? So the manufacturer creates a single large catalog, pushes that into the world, and good luck with it. Slowly start empowering the end user, whether that is the sales manager or even the customer, to self-service their own product data or their publication that they want to see or want to get, whether that is on Wago or this example. And I shared the Wago example in the chat if people want to check that out, where the end consumer is basically given the choice and the opportunity to get the data that they need, and basically only select the data that they need instead of just getting pulling that from the manufacturer or pulling that from the retailer or pulling that from the source, instead of being pushed a catalog and just hoping that it contains the data that you need, or hoping that you can find in that catalog the data that you need, because finding the right data is usually a pain as well.
It's a nice way, right? It's indeed over time, it becomes more and more to the individual. You could probably make a diagram like a pyramid or something, that if you go back ages, a couple of years, decade, then you had at the top level where you can actually automate and get rid of the copy paste. Now, a couple of years ago, it started to become possible to make it more personalized for based on the department level almost. So let's say the sales. And also for a couple of years, it actually becomes possible to make it hyper personalized based on each web visitor with the Wago example. And so it becomes better and better. And let's see what AI brings to this story in the near future as well. Because plenty of, PIM vendors are making their strides in that as well.
Yes, the interesting thing also is that now we're not talking about tools anymore. Like 5 or 6 years ago, prospects came to us and they wanted a tool. Like, how can you help us to connect InDesign to data? Like a tooled approach. Now we're talking about the business case, which is a completely different conversation. It's about business value. Where can we actually use this platform, which is very flexible, to create business value?
Yeah, it's a very nice one. Honestly, I would almost say to anyone on this call, if you're marketing, how cool is that Wago example, right? Because you're offering a better customer experience will actually lead to more revenue. if you are the sales team on this call, go ask your marketers and see how valuable, this is valuable for you, I would say, but how cool and how hard would it be for them to help you set up something like this? Because it actually helps the marketing department as well, because, well, less pressure on them from the sales department. So I think we showed the catalog level, the data sheet level, and then the individual level. And I think there's a lot of real world value in that transpires into or revenue directly, but also in not putting too much pressure on your teammates.
Yeah. It's all about empowering the end user, right? So whether that end user is the end consumer, like on the Wago example, or it's the sales manager that just needs to pull the set of products and the set of information that is relevant for the customer that he's trying to close or he's trying to serve. It's all about giving power back to the end user and giving them control on what they want to present or do with the data. And you need to have everything in place, right? So it starts with that foundation of product data. You need to have the tooling and the processes in place, but what it unlocks as a value unlock, that personalization at scale, basically, and empowering the end user, whether that is the end consumer or the sales manager, someone that is external or internal. That's, I think, super, super interesting what is happening there.
Yes, and at the end of the day, it's also about integrating different marketing channels, because what we see here is we got the website, or the web shop, as it were, but we integrate Priint into that. Why are we doing that? Well, because there is a value in the layouted presentation of a product. It provides a different educational value. It provides contextual value, which I might not be able to do on my website, but here it's actually both combined, integrated with each other. And that's, I think that's another important thing to think about, the user experience from an integrated approach, not silos, web, print, and whatever, but think about how this fits all together and maximizes value for, in this case, the end user.
Yeah. And I mean, if we have someone in the audience that wants to start tomorrow, right? This is not something you can just, unfortunately, it's not a flick a switch and you're there, right? Or just install Priint and you're there. There is a process that needs to work. There's the people and the governance that needs to work. It's the data quality that needs to work. If you want to start tomorrow, where should people start? What is the sort of throughput time or timeline that they should consider when it comes to time to value from a project like this?
Well, time to value for the Vago type of approach is very quick. If we got the data, we can set up a service like this, have a quick conversation about what data do we need to provide personalized information. But once we got that, within, let's say 10 days, this thing could be up and running. Net, typically there is a bigger discussion with IT and so on, but it's something we can set up pretty quickly.
That's super quick. And Erik-Jan, like, where should people start if they want to get started on this, or where do you see customers start when they want to start with this?
Yeah, tactical strategy first. Map this out on paper or in some drawing board to figure out how does the data flow, what do we need where, do we have the data to do this? This example here from Wago, which is already great, it explicitly asks for what do you want to see, which I think is good. But based on web traffic and web behavior, you can probably pre-select on what kind of persona do we suspect we have here. And what PIM data do we have? What is the publication layer that we have available? Pre-select that. Be able to overrule it, because you don't want to 100% do this preset. But if you have that, then you can do this in a quite good experience way. It becomes down to what data, what publication layers, what are the templates we have available, and then have it built on the fly in these kind of examples.
Good way to start is to simply think about scenarios where something like that might fit, and then talk to experts.
Exactly. Yeah,
Talk to
bring
us.
the experts in.
As we've done this
Come to
many
webwinkelvakdagen.
exactly at webwinkelwachtdagen. Done this many times for different scenarios, for different customers, user-driven personalization or company-driven personalization. There are many different examples, and we can have a conversation that very quickly leads to, like, blueprint, what could this thing actually look like?
And I would add, actually, also an element is because a lot of people think, of course, more tools, more cost, etc. But honestly, this can become not only a time saver and therefore a cost saver, it also drives a much better customer experience, and that translates usually directly into a revenue boost.
Yeah, so it is about creating the business case, right? So yes, of course, get those blueprints in place. Time to value is pretty short. It's direct revenue uplift when you make this a better experience for end users. I think both Peter and Egon, you can help customers or prospects with creating that business case, see which KPIs are influenced or impacted by making this process more efficient, making it more effective, making the end consumer, well, empowering the end consumer when it comes to getting the product data that they want or that they specifically need, getting that personalization either automatically or with a configurator like this or a generator like this, getting that in place. And indeed, it was already mentioned, if you want to learn more about Priint and get a real life example or speak to Peter in real life, you can join us on the Webwinkelvakdagen, where on booth 179, Priint will be hosting, well, we'll be hosting Priint on Wednesday the 25th. So if you come to Utrecht on Wednesday the 25th and join the Webwinkelvakdagen, which is a free event, you can meet Peter in real life, ask all questions you have regarding Priint and personalization on the booth, and we'd be happy to have you there as well. Maybe any closing thoughts from the both of you? Eric, you maybe go first, and then Peter, because we are coming up for time.
Yeah, I would say indeed strategy, tactical, operational. Make that plan, baby steps, and expand from there. And if you have a PIM system in place, then a Priint system honestly is a fantastic step when you are in the right industry and you work with datasheet labels, catalogs.
Yes, and don't be shy. Talk to us. We have lots of examples and ideas, and I really would be looking forward to meeting you next week at the Webwinkelwachtdagen in Utrecht. Obviously, you need to speak English with me, but that shouldn't be a problem. I really look forward to meeting everybody there. Last question from my side. Are there any questions? We got a couple of minutes. We got a couple of minutes.
You can drop them on the comment fields. So please do so, and we'll try to answer those questions live. If you are feeling shy because you have some questions that you don't want to ask publicly, that's also fine. You can reach out to Peter and Egan directly. You can find them on LinkedIn, and I've already mentioned their profiles in the comments. So feel free to just click on them and send them a quick personal message. And of course, as Peter already mentioned, have a chat on the Webwinkelvakdagen next week if you want to discuss something in depth, or just quickly spar with us on your product data process and how that connects to Priint. I think it's a hidden feature usually that is often forgotten, right? Or it is underappreciated, even though it is such a direct publication. Well, publication is such a direct customer interface, right? Whether that is here on the website or a technical data sheet or a product packaging. And it is the final thing, well, it's one of the final things that customers see or interact with before they make their purchase decision. And I think it's often underappreciated on the impacts you can have when you optimize this process. I don't see any questions currently in the chat. So if you have any questions left, please go to Peter and Erik-Jan directly or to me. And then I just want to close off with a big thank you to, well, the audience for sticking with us on this topic, but also to Erik-Jan and Peter joining us from across the globe to host this event together, and hope to see you all next week on booth 179 at Winkelwacht. Thank you guys, and see you next week, hopefully.
Thank you, Stephan. Great stuff.